Hello, and we are calling all the parents with prodigals and maybe some husbands and wives that's got some prodigal spouses as well. Welcome to Live in the Victory podcast, where we want to teach you how to fight in the spirit realm using God's battle instructions that are proven and tried and true to call back your prodigal out of the darkness into the light. So we just welcome you here. The name of this podcast is Live in the Victory. I'm Charlotte Mays, and this is my husband, Steve Mays.
Hi.
And we have been through the battle, and I have written the book for the glory of God, not because I'm a writer, but because I needed to tell the story of God's faithfulness throughout our journey. It has been a horrific journey. The struggle has been real, but God has been in the battle all along the way. So for me not to write this book that I'm going to introduce tonight and share with you, it just wouldn't have been right to not help others be able to learn through God-breathed battle instructions that He gave me how to fight back against the powers of hell. So that's what this Live in the Victory podcast is all about. Steve and I are here to not only share our story, but to introduce ourselves. This is our first podcast tonight. We were on the 700 Club back in June of last year. We're going to show you the clip from the 700 Club podcast, so you'll be seeing that in a few minutes, which will give you our story. And I know it'll be very inspirational and encouraging to you as you see how God just brought everything full circle and how He taught us all along the way to live in the victory. He spoke to me from the very beginning. He named this book, Live in the Victory. Don't wait until you have the victory to rejoice, but to rejoice now, knowing that the victory is yours. So we are here to not only to help you fight from a place of victory instead of defeat, but to also encourage you in your journey all along the way. So we're going to be talking about different chapters out of this book, so you can order this book on Amazon. I make maybe $1.49 for every book, so we're not here to sell books, okay? So we just want to help people who we know are having a very difficult time. Their hearts are broken. They are crushed in spirit because the enemy has them in a chokehold, trying to keep their children bound in darkness. But we're here to just help you discover God's secrets in His Word of how to fight back, and how to not only fight back, but to live and fight from a place of victory and not defeat, so that you can be stable and strong and secure in your journey and continue to function and work and do what you have to do. Steve and I had to work. We had jobs. And so we understand your struggle. And again, we have 16 chapters in this book, and we are going to focus on all parts of it just to help you guys. We're going to have people on our program that are in the struggle. Some are still in the struggle. Some of them have a place of victory where Steve and I are at. But you're going to be encouraged by many people that are going to come on this podcast sharing their story. So with that being said, we would like for you to watch our story on the 700 Club so that you'll have a better idea of what we're all about. So we're going to cut to that story right now and let you guys get a glimpse of what we're all about and what we went through. When Gunnar was born, we were so thankful for him. We lost a child stillborn about 2.5 years before he came along, so he was a beautiful gift to the family and a complete joy. And in church, he would actually lead worship. He was really just the best child you could ever ask for.
Steve and Charlotte Mays committed to godly parenting of their son Gunnar. During his teens, they noticed a change.
He was starting to pull away from us. His attitude was changing. He really wasn't wanting to go to church.
First of all, I thought, just a teenage thing, but then it turned into more.
I remember growing up in church. Growing up at an early age and just being surrounded by love. I love going to children's church. I love going to Wednesday night youth group. I started going to our local creek. It was called Turkey Creek in our hometown, and met up with a lot of other teenagers there and made some new friends. They really opened up a lot of doors to me to drugs and alcohol, sexual relations.
He was just becoming different and distant,
it wasn't Gunner anymore. I didn't know who he was.
I started smoking weed. That was the first time I started smoking weed whenever I was 15, the first time I ever did. I enjoyed sneaking out and going to parties.
We knew that, this was not, going well, and we couldn't seem to bring him back. It was very gut-wrenching as a mother, and to watch him, because I loved him, and I was so, he was my baby. He was the baby of the family.
The Mays sought help for Gunner through prayer, counselors, and pastors. Nothing seemed to help.
In the very beginning of the journey, when we saw things were getting worse and not better, the Lord spoke to me and said, live in the victory. Don't wait until you have the victory to rejoice, but rejoice now, knowing the victory is yours. There would be times when I just say, Lord, I trust you.
Charlotte came to me and said the Lord had told her that Gunner was going to go to jail and that we were to leave him in jail. And I guess my first thought was, how long?
I was introduced to another drug that was called Spice. It was a synthetic marijuana. It really pulled me out of my mind. It really put me under some sort of spell or something just that made me not myself at all. And I didn't have any money, and I didn't have a job. So the only thing I could do was to steal.
At age 18, Gunner was arrested for stealing pocket change out of cars. He was held with a signature bond.
He called me from jail and he said, Mom, I'm in jail and I need you to come and get me out. It's just a signature bond.
I was scared, I didn't want to be there, and I called mom and dad and let them know.
And I told him, I said, son, don't you remember I told you that God said you were going to go to jail and we couldn't get you out until he told us we could?
I remember being extremely mad. I remember being like, I was cussing them out, talking to them like I've never talked to them before.
I had to really hold back my emotions and stay, steadfast in, what God told us to do.
I knew what type of people that were in there with him and, what he was having to go through and the anxiety he was feeling. And I felt it all myself.
We went to see him the first time. He's madder than a hornet. So I thought, well, Lord, you're not ready yet. He's not ready.
I tried to manipulate them by saying like, I'm in this place, it's scary, I don't want to be here. This is jail. This is jail. It's like, you guys can't just leave me in here.
I leaned into the Lord with all my heart, and I did not give up on him, not once throughout the journey. I kept my focus on him, and on my darkest days, I would just spend time before the Lord in prayer, and I would just constantly say, and I trust you, Lord.
Steve and Charlotte continued praying for Gunner, and after leaving him in jail for 3 weeks, God answered.
I could see a change in him, and we asked him what happened. He said, well, I prayed.
You could see a countenance on his face. It was, he was different. You could see it, you could hear it in his voice, and it was refreshing.
I believe in week 3 and week 4 in jail, I was really starting to sober up. I started remembering who I was and the things that I believed. And I remembered how good my life is, outside of drugs and alcohol, and how thankful I was to have the parents that I have and to know the things that I know. And the truth was that I did know the Lord. I did know his goodness. I did know his grace. I just had lost sight of it at that time.
After 36 days in jail, Gunner was released to attend a Christian rehab center. Today, he serves in multiple ministries at his church and is grateful for his parents' obedience to God.
I'm so thankful for them leaving me in jail. I'm so thankful they had to exercise faithfulness and self-control. I know that my parents would give God all the glory just as I would.
God continued to show up. He was right there holding our hands throughout that journey, and we felt his love. We felt his abiding love. And when I fell on my knees, when I just was so hard, God would just let me know, I got this.
It's such a wonderful thing to have my son back. God has restored him.
It's really refined me in my spiritual walk in so many ways. And I've been able to use it to bring glory to him. And that's been precious to help other parents with prodigals to know that there is hope. But you got a part to play. You got a part to play in the battle. And so you do your part. God will be sure to do his. And you have a part to play was the final words. And I want to encourage you that those instructions are huge. You can either allow the enemy to destroy your family and go into a place of defeat and woe is me and not know what to do, or you can participate in the battle. And in my book, in my introduction, a friend of mine was sharing a dream she had where in the dream there was a man standing at the door, and he actually was dressed in white, and she was standing at the door too, and she knew he was the one that could open the door. And so that was one thing she just had a knowing that she knew. And then he asked her, are you here to participate or just be a witness? And he asked her that 3 times. And she said, I remember thinking to myself, I want to participate, but I don't know how. And that's many of you right now. You want to participate. You don't like where you're at. You didn't really choose this war. Some of you brought those children up sitting in the pew right beside you like Steve and I did. And this has not gone the way you expected. And let me tell you what, many of us, and Steve and I were very tempted, and we did it many a times, we just kept it all hidden and shrouded in darkness because we didn't want anybody to know. We're embarrassed, we're ashamed, we're Christian parents. I'm a leader in the church doing different things with the youth, and I mean, it was embarrassing, humiliating. I had a very public job as a real estate agent in a small community. Yeah, we wanted to go and hide. I wanted to move away, and I know you did too.
Oh, yeah.
It's like it was so embarrassing and humiliating. But you know, again, that was the temptation. That would be normal. That's probably what normal people do. But I'm personally not normal. I was so mad at what the enemy did that it gave me even more of what he intended for evil to use for good, to help others fight back. And when the Lord actually began to deal with me to write my story, to write a book, it actually came through a prophetic word, through a prophetess. I knew it was God, and the reason I did it was to bring him glory. Because to be honest with you, we didn't want to really tell our story. No. Because we're pretty embarrassed and ashamed of our story. And in the middle of God giving this word to this prophetess that she saw me writing books and traveling, I'm still in the middle of the deepest, darkest valley of my life. And I began to journal, and I began to write this book right in the middle of my journey. Many of the pages that you will read in here, I am deep in the darkness. I am in the flowing, rushing river and hanging on with my life raft, Jesus, for all I'm worth, and so is Steve. We are in it, and we are going with the flow of that river, and we're just trying to stay in the current of God's vibe where he is trying to take us. And throughout that journey, let me tell you what, people didn't write books about their journey. Because again, they're trying to shout, they're shrouding it in darkness where the enemy wants. How can we help anybody if we don't talk about it and share what God did? How can we glorify him if we're just going to keep it all hidden and you know, and where we wanted to keep it, to be honest with you? But no, that wouldn't have glorified God, and that would not have brought us to a place of where we could help others. So this book, again, was written right in the middle of my journey, and the battle instructions I have in this book came straight from the throne of God. Like I said just a little bit earlier, nobody wants to share this kind of stuff. Nobody wants to tell those things, and a lot of people, I mean, that's your child. You don't want to make them look bad. But my boys, they're like, you write your book, Mom. They read the book, and they're like, and we're 100% in support of what you're doing, what you're trying to do. You write your book and you publish your book. So we had their full approval, and we're like, okay. But the funny part of this is, you know, the Word of God says that in your weakness He will make you strong. I'm completely dyslexic. So dyslexic people, if you don't know much about them, they don't read real fast. They are terrible spellers. Steve, you were my Google for many years before Google came along because Steve can spell really well. Anyway, you know, so this wasn't something that was my strong suit. but it was my determination to glorify God. This is my book of remembrance to the Lord. This is my opportunity to not only remember what God did, but to write his story on what he did. So again, he titled this book, he told me to live in the victory, not wait until I had the victory to rejoice, but rejoice now knowing the victory is mine. And this is your story too. This is your victory too, because God is no respecter of persons. The same thing he did for me and Steve and our boys, he'll do for you. He wants to do that for you. So again, you've got a part to play. You've got a part to play. And in this book, we're going to teach you how to be a participant and not a witness. You've witnessed long enough the destruction of the enemy over your children, over your family, and over your own soul. And it even causes conflicts in your marriage. You've been a witness long enough. It's time to fight from the victor's circle. It's a time to fight from the victory and not a place of defeat. It's time to get up and get in the fight and no longer be the witness, like I said earlier. Be a participant. Fight back for your children. Fight back for your own sanity. Fight back for your marriage. Fight back for that child that God gave you. Everything you need to defeat the enemy came at the cross when you accepted Christ as your Savior. He did a finished work on that cross. And he could have given you the wonderful child who graduated summa cum laude, who is just doing great things. They're in ministry. They're doing all these, and you hear all these parents, and they're just praising, and oh my gosh, and it was the easiest child, and they had all this victory, and they didn't struggle like we're struggling. Yeah, I wanted those kids. I fully expected we would have those kids. However, we did not. We raised them up in a fallen world just like you are. We tried to do everything right. We put parenting at the forefront. We put God at the forefront. We raised them in church like many of you have. And everything that was supposed to go right went wrong. And I remember telling the Lord one day, I said, Lord, I just want to be proud of them. I just want to, like other parents, just be like praising, look at them. Oh my gosh, my children have, they look how great they're doing. I just want to, and I meant it from my heart. I just want to be proud of them. And today I am. Today I am very proud of them. I am so proud of the men they have become and their fire that they have for the Lord. And in Gunner's story, in that story, one thing was left out that I really want to make sure as we end this podcast is told. And in that story, we left our son in jail for 36 days, we were in jail for 36 days, for sure. And we had already been in prison before that with our oldest son. So we were not a stranger to jail at all. And we weren't a stranger to sitting on the same little cold stoop that they had out there, a little stool, and talking to our sons through the same phones as they're sitting on the other side of us. We weren't a stranger to any of this. This went on with the older son, but here's the difference. When God told my husband in the beginning, and that's in the book here, when our first son got in trouble the first time, and he was in jail, he called his daddy and said, Dad, I'm in jail. I need you to come get me out. It's just a signature bond. Sounds similar to the story. And nobody in our family had ever gone to jail. We were just in shock. We didn't know what to do. But that morning, I knew what to do. I began to pray. Well, Steve got up, and I'm sure he prayed, and he got ready. He got his clothes on, he got his shower. And while I was in my prayer time in my closet, the Lord spoke to my heart and said, 3 days and 3 nights. As Jonah was in the belly of the whale, your son is to stay in jail for 3 days and 3 nights. And I thought, surely not. This was overwhelming to us. Like I said, nobody we ever knew was in jail. So when Steve came to me, I told him that, and you just would.
You know him very well.
He couldn't receive that. He's like, so he didn't really say a whole lot, but out the door he went, and I was so overwhelmed that I'm just letting go. And so again, we were disobedient to the Lord in what God had told us to do. He spent, I think, one night in jail at that point, so we only had 2 more nights. So long story short, we ended up living the drama, which is in the book here, of the story of Jonah. And we learned from that awful, horrific experience that when God gives you a word, you follow that word. And it is the fastest path to victory. You can take the long ship on the horrible sinking ship around, or you can do it God's way and you can get there a lot quicker. And looking back a few years later, as we're going through the prison and the jail and all of that, we see that, wow, we made a huge mistake not following God, what he was trying to get us to do. So when our youngest son started getting in trouble and he ended up in jail, the Lord gave me a warning. He's going to jail, like my video, 700 Club said. And Steve, we're both like, oh boy. And sure enough, he went, and we already knew what to do, that we're to leave him there. The Lord said, leave him there until I tell you to get him out. We didn't have an end date. We didn't have 3 days and 3 nights. We didn't know when this thing was going to end. But here's the cool part. As I finish up what I want to share with you guys on this podcast, here's the cool thing of all, the participating with God. So we let him go to jail, as you can tell. And every time we went, you saw in the video how I knew he wasn't ready because there was no heart change. All right? So toward the end of this journey, our son had been in True Purpose Ministries, and he had walked out. And so my husband came up with the brilliant God idea that we'll just, would they allow him to finish out his probation if we sign him out and take him straight to Tennessee, because we're living in Florida, and finish his probation in Tennessee? We knew he'd never make it in Florida. Too many friends, too many influences. So he went. We had a court-appointed attorney.
We did.
And so you went. You couldn't get a hold of him, so you went to the actual prosecuting attorney.
Yes.
And did you call him or go in and see him?
I called, made an appointment with him.
Yeah. And in that appointment, you laid out the plan that you'd like to, work out the probation in Tennessee. And he said, well, let me think about it. And he said, where's your son now? And Steve
Well, I
said,
told him he was still in jail, and he knew he was under a signature bond, and it kind of shocked him that we still had left him there. But I knew, without doubt, I didn't like it, but I knew without doubt that I had to leave him there because of what had happened to my previous son, our previous son, that I didn't listen to God, and I paid for it. So this time I was going to do it, and I knew God was going to follow through on it, and he did.
and you told him when he said that, you're this is just a signature bond. But he's like looking at Steve like, well, you can go sign him out at any moment. And Steve says, yeah, we know that, but God told us to leave him in there, and we feel like this is what the Lord would have us to do if you would, see if you can approve that. And so Steve just kind of left it there, and was it the next day or a couple days later?
Yeah, a day or two later.
Yeah.
It wasn't very long.
Yeah, after that,
Yeah.
Steve gets his phone call from this guy, this attorney, and he said to Steve, what did he say to you, Steve?
Well, he basically said, surprised that since it was just a signature bond, that we had left him there, or left him in there, and that he was, he didn't normally do this.
He's going to strike you a deal. He said, I'm going to make you a deal.
Yeah, he could have been a little bit of a hard case, possibly, I'm not sure. But, it's like he didn't put up with a bunch of nonsense. But he said since we had left him there, he felt led to let us take him to True Purpose and to let him finish out the program. And he told us, if he finishes out the program and we get proof of it after a year, then I will expunge his record.
And seal it.
Yeah. And, of course, we were both very excited. got Gunner in the car, took him to Tennessee,
Straight from jail.
straight from jail.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, a year later, he graduated. And the records were sealed and expunged. And now God is still very active in our son's life. And he is serving the same ministry that brought him out of this mess.
Yeah, he's about ready to go on staff there. But what was one thing that you told me that day that attorney said, I was so impressed that you and your wife left your 18-year-old son in jail for 30, well, at that point it was like 33 days, 30 some odd days, that I'm going to make you a deal. That's what got his attention. Because he told Steve, he said, nobody does that. And so he's like shocked by everything that's happening here. But see, that was our part to play. That was our part to play. We had to do it God's way.
And I'll tell you right now, I don't, this is something that God has to tell you to do.
Yes.
You need to listen to God.
Yes. And be sure.
And be sure, because it might not be the best situation for you. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you listen to God, He'll tell you what you need to do.
That's right.
And that's the key thing here is
right.
Pay attention.
Yeah.
And pay heed to what the Lord says.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a good word, because everybody, God's doing things differently in everyone's life.
Exactly.
For us, and we were a lot further down that road. Our faith was really strong at that point. And I get words of knowledge, and Steve knows that. And some of them are harder than others to actually follow through on. And this was a huge one. And the first one was huge. But again, sometimes you learn your lessons.
Well, I learned my lesson from the first time that, I wasn't going to doubt God again.
Yeah. And he knew I wouldn't say something like that if I wasn't 100% sure. And, God said he was going to jail, and sure enough, he did. And so that was one confirmation. But again, I can totally agree with Steve. Be sure that this is God's leading for you and your prodigal. But with all that being said, when we did it God's way, when we participated and followed through on God's plan, even though it was the most difficult 36 days of our life, you never get comfortable with leaving your children in jail. But when we, remember I said earlier that when you do it God's way, it's a faster path to victory. A year, little bit of, ups and downs, but always God just in it, God working it out. And the other story was a lot longer. We looked at, basically 6 full years in prison, in and out of prison and jail. And so we learned along the way that God's way is the best way, God's way is the only way, and if you have a confirmation that that is the way He's leading you, whatever way, then walk it out and trust God to protect your Daniels while they're in the lion's den. And He will. He will. He is faithful to shut the mouths of the lions. I love later when we talked to Gunner, there were some really scary guys in there. I watched them walk by every time, the whole pod would walk by, and I can see them through the window behind Gunner, and I'd be like, oh, I trust you, Lord. Oh, here comes somebody scarier. Oh, I trust you, Lord. I mean, it was a faith walk that was, like I said,
he was barely 18.
He was just a kid. He's little. Yeah, and he's only like 5'9". But anyway, with all that being said, what would have things look like had we done the same thing again? Gone in, got him out of jail, signed that signature bond, didn't cost us a dime, brought him home. We would not have had the same results. No. We would have had the same results that we had with the older son, I'm sure, but we would not be just so much faster down that road to victory. that we would have been the mariners back on the ship again that you'll read about in the book. And you're probably, many of you are those mariners on the ship right now. You're bailing that water, you're throwing over your luggage, you're throwing out everything in life that is important to you, your careers, you're selling your maybe second mortgage in your house. I don't know what crazy you're doing, because we wanted to do the same thing, and we did a lot of that. Or you can be the person who says, no, we're going to do it God's way. And we're going to trust him that if he gave us this plan, that he is the Lord of this plan, and he will watch over us and he will watch over our children throughout this journey. And I really want to encourage you in that. I want to leave you with that word, that we have a choice and we have a part to play. And I want to encourage you, do your part.
Yes.
Do your part, and I
Very
promise you, God will do his part. God bless you, and hey, we'll see you here on episode 2 as we take a deeper dive into the spiritual warfare of being a parent with prodigals, and we are here to help you walk out this journey with the Lord, and if he is at our right hand, we will not be shaken.
That's right.
We will be victorious, and I want to leave you with that. God bless you. Thank you for enjoying, just being with us tonight, being our guest, and we look forward to seeing you again on episode 2. God bless you. Good night.
Thank you.